So let me introduce to you the next two speakers. My first speaker will be Saygin Yalcin, and he's a founder of and the CEO at sellanycar.com. He's also founder of sukar.com, a private shopping site, partner at the Jabbar Internet Group, and partner at Souk.com Group, a large e-commerce company. Mr. Yalcin is an academic lecturer on entrepreneurship and e-commerce at the Canadian University of Dubai. He has been active in promoting entrepreneurship and early-stage venture capital activities in the UAE. Mr. Yalcin holds an international master's degree in business administration and economics, and he studied at WHU Otto Boncham School of Management, University of South Carolina, and this is a difficult one, of Mexico, but it's Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de Mexico. There we go. Mr. Yalcin, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just arrived from Dubai, and I have only 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep it very, very short, and I hope we can discuss the details you want to go into after that. So, in general, we're going to just fly over these slides. So, what are SMEs? And I'm going to use SMEs as startups. Let's call them startups. And I'm going to show why we really need startups in the Middle East, and what the benefits, and especially the economic benefits, are by creating an environment which is supporting startups. And you have answered the major questions already, and I'm very happy because these are actually exactly the two choices I made, A and D, and I'm actually going to come, I think, A and E, and I'm going to come to the details now. So what is a startup? Usually they say a startup is a young company with 250, some define it as less than 500 employees or team members. But for me, actually, a startup is a mindset. And it is basically this. It's a backpack. This is what I had when I came to Dubai around 4.5 years ago. And all I had was basically this idea and this vision. We want to create one of the first online private shopping clubs, or actually one of the first relatively well-funded e-commerce ventures. And there weren't really a lot of them back then. So this is always what I use as a symbol to say you don't really need everything we have just discussed in the questions, right? These are things we really want to achieve. But the major thing is always comes from the entrepreneur, is the mindset. So having said that, let's go to the economical benefits later on, what we actually could achieve if we reach these, if we basically bridge this need. So I'm not going to talk too much about myself. We have already heard a bit about it. So I just wanted to say that I was involved in one of the biggest e-commerce ventures in the region. I'm still partnered with a couple of holdings which are involved in e-commerce in the Middle East. So this was actually my first office. Looks great. It's just actually a restaurant with free Wi-Fi. That's actually 3 months where we worked in, and it was where we hired the first people, where we wrote the business plan, and where we actually attracted venture capital and the first team members, lying on both sides, saying to the investors that we have the team already, saying to the team that we already have the financing. So we're actually trying to bridge the situation. And again, this is still from an entrepreneurial point of view, and I'm always going to talk from this point of view, even though I know that most in the audience are actually on the other side, on the investor side, I believe, I hope, I assume. So let's just jump to it. So startups grow. Startups grow from 1 to thousands of employees, and I've been part of it, I've seen it. I can actually vouch for that, what great benefits we can achieve in the economical point of view. So if you look at it, startups are everywhere, and startups are actually 99.8% of all, when I say startups, SMEs, of all companies in the world. And if you look at it in the Middle East, you see huge numbers of portions in terms of GDP, portions in terms of employment, and portions in general of being in companies, a number of companies. So in the UAE, for example, 60% of the workforce and 75% of GDP. And if we look at it, mature markets are actually a good example. If you see it, 99.8% in the EU 27 are startups or SMEs. And 67% of them, actually 67% of all employment comes from these companies. And 58% of all gross value added. So what could actually a startup or an SME lead to? It's job creation. This is actually what the region needs. If you look at it, the population under 24 years old in KSA is 57%. In the UAE, it's 35%. If you look at the countries which are really suffering from unemployment, it's even higher. It's 50% in Egypt, in Jordan, and in Lebanon, it's 40%. These countries really need job creation. And job creation comes through SMEs. So there's more. Because if you look at specifically in the GCC, we are very much relying on the oil sector, right? And startups and SMEs are actually a very great tool to deviate from this focus and create new things. It doesn't have to be new products. It could be just a product which is copied from a mature market to a Middle Eastern market. The other one is actually the more SMEs we have, the better competition we have, and price lowering effects we will have, and quality improving effects we will have on the economy. Last but not least, startups usually are the ones which can also employ people in rural areas and actually covering small parts of the country where usually big conglomerates don't get to. So having said that, we really need SMEs to achieve economical prosperity. So if you look at it in the MENA region, the SME 250 is 57% of all contribution to employment, 62% if you take the SME 500. But if you ask the entrepreneurs, or if you ask the people what actually hinders you from achieving success, most of them say the same thing. It's access to finance. And I can vouch for that. I have gone through this, and I'm still going through this headache. And what is actually a pity is it's not only the investor's fault, I would call it. First and foremost, what we see is management capacity from entrepreneurs. We need education. And we need to show why we are worth investing, why we are worth investment. All right? So the second part is, great, we have a tax-free region in the GCC mostly, but the cost of startups, again, the flat fees are relatively high for small entrepreneurs who just starting probably out of their own pocket. The other point is processing time. In certain countries, it just takes too much time, or it's a headache. Very important also, the legal judicial system is not strong in terms of protecting your intellectual property. And last but not least, of course, financing, access to financing. But what I really see as a problem is the criminalization of debt. If you can't take risk without fearing jail, that is a huge issue for entrepreneurs. It's going to hinder you from achieving this economical prosperity I was just talking about. At the end of the day, you got to fear that if you fail with your business plan and you can't pay back the loans you might get, your check's going to bounce and you're going to go to jail. This is a huge problem we need to learn from mature markets. I know Kuwait has been working on it. They have actually finalized a law, but they have never implemented it. UAE is still working on it. I see most of the Middle Eastern countries that they still don't have a strong judicial system dealing with financial debt, especially out of entrepreneurial endeavors. So banks don't finance startups, period. In the Middle East, it's definitely a headache. I actually have been talking with banks, and the reason why they don't invest is, of course, the risky and small cash flows. We have the lack of collateral, but more importantly, we don't have a credit history system. So the banks don't actually know who they're dealing with. Say, well, is this guy trustworthy or not? They don't know. There's no system which is tracking your credit worthiness. And of course, as a startup, you don't have a bank relationship, right? So you're probably just not going to get any loans, if you need loans. So this is what I have been working on. And I've marked those fields where I'm actually active in. I'm actually trying to educate students who are willing to become entrepreneurs. I try to awaken it. I'm trying to show them tools how to bridge an idea to reality, right? And I'm also promoting regional venture capital because I believe we really need investors. And if I look at it, there's probably maybe a handful of them who can bridge the following. So we have a great market. We have ways to identify if an idea is good or not. These are questions we always ask in class. We have tools to make business plans, all great. We have sources of capital, but where do we actually get money from? If you look at it, so we have seed, early, expansion, late, and IPO. There has not been an e-commerce IPO ever in the Middle East. There is going to be probably in the next 2 to 3 years, I assume, but where do we actually get stuck in the Middle East is where it says A, right? Seed is still possible. Seed you can get from your friends, from your family, from yourself, from your bank account. But if you then show it works, you need money which helps you grow. This is where we get stuck. There's only a handful of investors, especially in the e-commerce sphere, who are willing to invest more than maybe $500,000, more than $1 million, but usually the money doesn't come from this region. We have raised a lot of money in the past 4 to 5 years. But none of it, and but a very small percentage of it comes actually from the people who should have invested because they're the first to see the opportunity. But they don't realize it because Americans, South Africans, Europeans, these are the ones who have witnessed success in this industry and they have a lower challenge to invest.
Saygin?
1 minute.
Yeah. No, you're over by 3 minutes, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We shall continue the conversation. Please have a seat. So first question I have is to you, Yalcin. How are, or you are in fact very optimistic, the questioner says, about SMEs, but how do you explain the 70 to 80% failure rate in SMEs during the first 1 to 3rd year? Can we do something about it? Is it done through better education?
Thank you for the question. It's a very, very important question. 7 to 80% failure rate is actually really good, first of all. But yes, we can do a lot about it. We discussed it. The management capacity the entrepreneurs are enjoying, or actually the education they're enjoying, is not sufficient. There's no institution, or I would say a very minority of institutions actually focus and emphasize entrepreneurship and business creation. Now, that's probably what we can do. As I said, we need also an infrastructure which is supporting that. From a judicial point of view, people are actually scared to open up their own company because they might end up in jail. This is a huge problem. We need to solve that. And once you get the money, I said seed capital is fine, you might get it. But then what next? You might have achieved a partial proven concept. You might be on the edge of actually achieving something, but then you get stuck at Series A because you need money and no one is actually believing in you because there is a high failure rate, there is no infrastructure which is supporting it, there's no real success story, or not a lot of success stories which you can actually base your decision on. So I think it's a collective collection of factors which we need to influence in order to achieve.
Tell me, I was fascinated by what you said about some countries, including Kuwait, I think you mentioned, who are studying what to do, what kind of things to do to avoid jail, as you put it, the financial failure leading to jail. Have you heard them speak of good ideas? Have you given them any good ideas? Are you talking to people in your field? And please come in on that question. But let me start with Saygin to tell me what's going on there. And who else other than Kuwait is involved with that?
Kuwait hasn't implemented it yet. They have been working on it. What I'm saying is governments I'm not saying governments are not supporting entrepreneurship. There is a lot going on. In the UAE, there is actually a lot of government-supported entrepreneurial programs where you can sign up mostly for locals, but it's a good start. So you will get money, and you will get probably maybe 200,000 dirhams, maybe $250,000 maximum, and then you can solve the first problems. But it still has nothing to do with the criminalization of the debt.
Right, so talk about that. This is exactly what I wanted to understand. Talk about the criminalization of the debt. Are there ideas to deal with that exist in Western economies, Western countries that are possibly a model for this region, or does this region need a different model?
1876 in UK, criminalization of debt was actually pro-entrepreneurship. That's when they implemented it. So I think there is a lot of great examples, especially in Europe and in the US, where we can just copy. And I see there is a movement, but it's not in this specific sphere of the judicial system.
And we'll come in on that.
Sure. I mean, I'm much more basic in my thinking. I mean, so first of all, on the failure side, for whoever asked about the failure side, I mean, it's a good sign because that means people are thinking big, and we need people to think big. We need to go from startups to scale-ups, and for them to go from startups to scale-ups, they need to think big. That's the reality of it. I think on the point of all of the mitigating factors, there's a lot that can be done to support entrepreneurship. I'm still a believer that the first thing we need to do is actually to believe, to sincerely believe that entrepreneurship is the future of this region. With that, I'm not worried about the fear factor of failure from illegal and all of these. I have yet to meet an entrepreneur that actually cares about what happens when he goes bankrupt. I mean, just genuinely speaking. I think these things are a bit more...
What do you mean? Really? They don't care if they go bankrupt? Does that not encourage rash behavior that, all right, I'll just try it, I fail, there's no accountability?
I think as organisms, as people, we're much more pragmatic than we're given credit for. I mean, I think there's a lot of structuring that's done around us, but we tend to navigate towards doing the right things and doing the responsible things. Most of the entrepreneurs that I have worked with and that I have, haven't started a venture thinking about what is the legal ramification of this not working out when I get to point B or to point C or point D. I think the changes in the laws as it pertains to these things will accelerate our ability to get failed entrepreneurs back into the system. And I'll give you an example with Jordan. We probably have X number of SMEs listed as registered in Jordan. It's because most of them are probably shut down. It's just they don't have the money to actually go through the formal process of refiling, filing for bankruptcy in the proper methodology. So cleaning that up will allow us to get these people back into the system from what they've learned to be able to build new and better ventures.
Saygin, the question is put in a way, I think you answered it, but I'm going to put it in the way it was written. Isn't startup finance and activity inhibited by what they put in quotation, fear of failure, particularly in the Middle East? Do you believe that startup finance and activities are inhibited by the fear of failure?
It depends on the kind of investor. The venture capitalist, he's definitely aware of the failure rates, and he's going to invest accordingly. Banks, definitely, they will not support it if there's a bit of a risk premium which you can add on startups. So I believe it really depends who's investing. But in the Middle East, if you look at the venture capital scene, if there is some which is significant, you will see that there are professionals, and I will still say that it's not a lot. It's probably 5 to 10 maximum, which you can take seriously in terms of building great and big ventures. And then there is investors who are putting their money and comparing a startup to a real estate investment or to some, and say I could get 8% there and maybe 50% from this investment, but it's more risky. Looking at it this way is completely wrong. And I cannot blame these investors because they haven't seen what an investment into the e-commerce sphere can actually lead to. That's why our money comes from outside the region, because these people in the US, they have seen it. So they say, well, if it works here, I just take this product and put it into this region. These people also eat and drive and wear clothes, so it's probably going to work. So their hurdle is just the timing. They say, is it the right time to invest now? not is e-commerce or internet investment in general or startup investment in general working. This question has been answered. So the only question is timing and product market fit.
I have this question. I think is to both, but let me take it to who do I take it to? I think I take it to Emil. Any idea how much SMEs in MENA participate in GDP per capita?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is the question. Anybody wants to read it? Maybe
I'll give it to you as the academic. I'm not a statistics guy.
Yes, it's in one of my slides, actually. We can distribute. I think it's GDP must be 75% or something. But please look it up. I don't memorize these numbers, but it's one of the, it's a significant number.
So I'll answer this question in a different way. Can I answer this question differently? Sure. I mean, the way to think about SMEs, right, and particularly scale-ups, is that on average, from 25 to 95% of new jobs are created through these types of companies. So I don't know what they contribute today. What I'm looking at the gap in terms of the number of jobs we need to create and where the focus needs to be just for us to be, safe and secure in terms of creating a sustainable environment as economies in this part of the world. Investing in startups and and more importantly, I'd probably say scale-ups, but both startups and scale-ups, there's just no question about their contribution from a net job creation. It's not where we are today, it's where we want to be in the future, is what I would say.
Would either one of you be interested in investing in sectors other than technology?
Yeah.
Such as?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of knowledge-based industries. I mean, I think there's, the creative sector as an example, for those that are into crowdsourced financing. On Eureka today, you can go and see Joe Bedu, a Jordanian company that over the last 3 days has already raised $77,000. And participate, with the Jordanian, participate in it by investing a small amount. I don't care how much, $200 into an SME. You'll get a feel of what it's about. Other sectors, I mean, I think there's a lot of emerging knowledge-based sectors that provide a heck of a lot of opportunity. As a venture capitalist, our thought process is really on knowledge because that's where value creation is scalable for us, where one guy can create the equivalent of 20,000 people just because of the way they have no limitations on access to borders and the way knowledge creates value in and of itself, how scalable it is. But I would say there are other sectors. I think some of the stuff that's happening in the clean tech space is really, really exciting in the region. Again, I go back to the creative sector across the board. So I think there's a lot of areas. In the pure SME space, there's so much opportunity for us in the hospital. Anything related to lifestyle is an enormous opportunity from an SME base.
Saygin, would you be interested in investing in other than technology?
Let me answer it in 2 points. First of all, I see myself as an entrepreneur. Yes, I would definitely invest outside technology as well. But the part of investment I really focus on, or would focus on, is where I have an understanding and where I can add more than just money. And I believe I'm strongest, or my strength is in technology, is in e-commerce and internet business in the region. That's why I would not like to deviate from it. But I have heard great ideas which were completely offline, and I looked into it. But for me to add value there is more difficult.
Can I add one point?
Sure.
Just to make the point on this, I mean, we need to think about what technology means today, right? I mean, technology is a horizontal. Every venture has technology. And I think most of the startups that I see today are actually solving traditional problems, okay, using technology. So they are a migration of traditional challenges, leveraging technology into moving these forward. So most of them today, there isn't what is it, suffix, prefix? There isn't a prefix with tech. You can see real estate tech, you can see ed tech, you can see med tech. Every sector has a tech component addition to it. And if you dig into these companies, you'll find most of them are just leveraging technology, but their core business model is built around a traditional, kind of like tech-defined model.
Yeah, stay with it, Emil. Why is venture capital focused on technology sector above others?
Again, it's just the scalability. I think, we're Dakwak, a company here in Jordan we've invested into, right, does translation. His market is anywhere, any SME in the world. I mean, this is the singular benefit that he has. He doesn't have to worry. I mean, why are we focused on local to global? Maybe just to address that for a second. It's just the regional market is so inefficient. I mean, just to sit and to deal with a visa, to go into Saudi Arabia or to go into Kuwait, I mean, just complete nonsense. I mean, just fundamentally nonsense for somebody that's trying to build something up. Changing the way a platform looks, you know, to fit this particular market or this particular market, highly inefficient in general, right? Technology gives us the ability to break out of all of this. I can sit here and serve the island of Manhattan, right, which is probably more efficient as an economy, you know, than these entrepreneurs. Just one city block in Manhattan probably has more economic opportunity than one Arab country for these guys, just simply because of the efficiency, you know, the efficiency in decision making and getting things done. These are the opportunities, I think, from a change perspective. We need to open these opportunities up locally for our own entrepreneurs because everybody else is taking them. I mean, when the US comes in and provides 70,000 visas for immigrants to do startups, who are they targeting? They're targeting our best and brightest.
Let me take the same, a similar question that was actually to Emil, but I'm going to give it to you because I think he already answered it. Until now, it's really, you know why I said that. It says, until now, most, if not all, of the MENA VC venture capital investments has been in tech startups. Why? And I think you already answered that. Go ahead, please, yes.
It's where we have the biggest opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, when I came to Dubai in 2009, I was shocked by the numbers. Actually, I was shocked before, that's why I came. I looked at the internet penetration rates, and I saw that there are, back then, 65 million people online in the MENA region. We have a market of 250 million people. This number was growing, actually, by, I think, 9,000% in the last 9 years, so from 2000 to 2009. So the broadband penetration was actually huge. So what was missing was now, I always believe in two things. You have a great audience and you have a great product. You put them together, you will have a great business. Now, I said, okay, there's the audience, but there's not enough product we can offer. So there was a lack in supply. So I believe we have so many working business models outside the region, which we just need to copy to this region, and the most successful ones are those, the ones which actually already exist, but not for the Middle East or from the Middle Eastern people, and that's why I believe it makes much more sense to invest there.
Emil, as an investor, what's my exit strategy from VC investments in the MENA region?
Right, I mean, a great question. Obviously, you hear it every day, just as a concept, right? I think, first of all, we need to understand this region needs patient capital, right? I mean, let's make no mistake about it. Any perception that knowledge is going to generate an exit, knowledge-based businesses are going to generate an exit within the coming 3 years, if that's the outlook, you shouldn't be looking at it. What we have to realize is globally, right, when we're looking at exit markets, these things fundamentally take time. An average life cycle of a fund, most of the people that I have spoken to, right, you're talking about 9 years, even in the US. I mean, there's nothing that's mind-numbingly shocking that these ventures take time to develop and to grow. In our region, it takes longer. Do they create value? They create enormous value. I mean, we've lived this experience, right? As it relates to exits, I think as we integrate more and more, as we open up ourselves first, too, and as we integrate more and more with the world, these things will start to happen in and of themselves. You don't sell a company, people buy great companies. We need to focus on building great companies. And we need to focus on creating a great market collectively across the region that will interest people to come and acquire these businesses. I mean, just as a point.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have more
I would add something from an entrepreneurial point of view. I see, first of all, we shouldn't, as an entrepreneur, just look at an exit strategy when we start a company. But what I also see is there is this lack of focus on profitability in internet ventures. I mean, we just happen to accept that we will burn money for the next 7 years and just don't really care about why we're burning so much money. So I can say I was a really bad CEO of the first company I built, and I just thought money will come because we can burn, and the burn rate is accepted to be this high. But at the same time, over the years, I have learned that really we need to think in terms of from the venture capitalist point of view as well. If the entrepreneur just loses focus on profitability and just figures out that your contribution margins don't make sense anymore. I think this is also some kind of a lack of management capacity. Just we see that entrepreneurs forget about profitability, especially in the tech scene. And we shouldn't just take the US as an example that money-burning companies can create exit values of $20 billion.
I have a question to you because you spoke of education, and the question is, what specifically must be taught? And then after that, I'm going to conclude with 2 questions to the 2 of you, and that has to be done in 2 minutes. So the question is, what must be taught specifically when you speak of education?
6 segments I cover is entrepreneurship spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit, what it is actually. Idea evaluation, right? I am one of the slowest guys before I start a venture. I look into every single question I might have, right? We have 6 major questions we cover, but I don't want to go into details. Then we have business planning. Not the text part, the numbers part. Just make sure that the numbers make sense. If your best case scenario is $10 million, probably you're not going to find venture capitalists. Financing, right? Who's going to pay for this? Team and business intelligence. And this covers actually from the spirit to the idea to step by step, from planning to financing to team building, and then actually the first 90 days of the company working, so business intelligence. These are the 6 segments I would focus on.
Excellent. Now, can you, the 2 of you, I'm going to combine 2 questions, and that will be the last 2 questions I could get in, despite my wish that we had longer time. So the questions are as follows. How can we bridge the gap between SMEs and investors looking for new investment options? And the second question is this. If I have a new project idea, is this idea? Does this say idea? Data. Is this data or idea? Oh gosh, handwriting. If I have a new project idea, it seems to me, and the banks don't finance it, how can I start up my project? So, how do you do it without money? Let's do it starting with you and concluding with you. Okay, go ahead.
The first one was bridging.
The first was how can we bridge the gap between SMEs and investors looking for new investment options? And the second one is that if I have a new project and the banks don't want to finance it, how can I start up my project?
Again, this is nothing we should invent. It already exists. There are great platforms where venture capitalists can meet new entrepreneurs and ideas. It could be crowdfunding. It could also be a website like AngelList, right? It's a platform where venture capitalists and investors and angels are signing up and where entrepreneurs are actually signing up. So I believe it's just communication. Besides the fact that there are not a lot of venture capitalists in the region, right? This is a fundamental issue we need to solve. Let's assume we have a lot of investors and we actually change the mentality of investing, then it's just a matter of communication and building platforms, which is again based on technology, to establish this bridge.
Yeah, I mean, for that question, I would say, you know, you'd be amazed at how much there is around you if you open your eyes and you look in terms of funding opportunities and how quickly the landscape is changing on a daily basis. You know, don't wait for anybody. Don't wait for politicians. Don't wait for government. Don't wait for financiers, in the classic definition of financiers. I used one example, which is the crowdsourced funding today. I think what I've learned in my life, you'd be amazed how supportive friends and family can be to get you started. And also you'd be amazed, you know, to Saygin's point, you know, just reach out to, if it's a tech venture, just as a point, using that as an example, reach out to local, regional, and global accelerators. I mean, I've seen people go out of, you know, a small, let's just call it a garage, like a cafe in Amman, go straight to an accelerator in Palo Alto or in San Francisco or in Sweden and wherever. I mean, there is a demand today, there is enormous demand for talent. There's an enormous demand for new ideas, so do that. For the other one about how do I get started from zero, I mean, one easy example is apply to Oasis 500. I mean, that's, or start an accelerator in your neighborhood. I mean, there is that much opportunity out there.
Emil Qubaisi, Saygin Yalcin, we have had many requests for copies of your presentations. What is the best way for people to contact you after today? Can you want to say it out here so that people could contact you to get your presentations?
So EMILE at Silicon, SILICON, siliconbadia.com. And Twitter is just eCubase. Feel free to reach out at any time. Happy to share anything. Would love to host you guys at our offices, whoever would ever be interested to learn more. And whoever wants to pitch their venture, I hope some of you do. Knock on the door at any time. Or else go support an entrepreneur. It would be great. I'm sure most of you guys already do this. I think we're preaching to converted. But if you can mentor an entrepreneur, if you can spend some time with somebody that's starting up a venture, you've done something fantastic.
Good for you. Good for you. Go ahead, your contacts.
Email I would suggest as well. It's my first name, Saygin. That's Sugar, Anthony, Yankee, Germany, India, Nancy.
Oh, what a combination. So we know there's a Nancy in your life, there's a Germany in your life. How's Nancy?
That's part of my name.
All right.
At speed, like fast, lane, like fast lane, capital.com. Speedlane capital.
You got that? Okay. What a pleasure to have young men who are changing the world in a very lovely way. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.